Today we're going to talk about a difficult subject: elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation, what we all need to know. I'm Shanna Siegel, an elder law attorney with over 30 years of experience helping families protect their loved ones as they age. There are 6 topics that we're going to address today: understanding elder abuse, common settings and situations, warning signs to watch for, legal responsibilities and reporting, where to turn for help, and when to involve an elder law attorney. So let's get into it. First, understanding elder abuse. Unfortunately, I often find that victims are embarrassed, and so they don't want to share what's happening to them. They're reticent to share the information with those who can help them. Often, they're also fearful because it's their loved ones who are engaging in the difficult behavior. So in those situations, it's really difficult to find out what's happening and to be able to help. Each state has differing laws as to how these issues are addressed, and some states have some specialized resources. So it's important to reach out to your local agencies to get resources. And we'll talk about that more later. 2, common settings and situations. We often find that abuse happens at home, but it can also happen in a facility. As I mentioned, elder abuse is often people who the senior knows. It could be family, friends, neighbors, or unfortunately, caregivers. Financial abuse by hired help, so the caregivers, private caregivers, is unfortunately quite common. We find that when individuals are in group homes or in facilities, abuse can go unnoticed or unreported. Again, we have individuals who are very vulnerable. They're relying on those caregivers to provide support to them, and sometimes those caregivers are taking advantage. One of the tips that I always tell families is how important it is to safeguard their personal documents and their valuables. I know sometimes I go into people's homes and meet with them or sign documents with them, and I see that they have papers, they have mail, and their tax documents and things that are, left out. And I always say to them, if I'm seeing them, what about that handyman or that neighbor who comes over to visit? They're going to have access to those too. So it's really important to remind our loved ones to make sure that all of those documents are put away and that all valuables are safeguarded if there's a possibility that there's going to be people coming in and out of our homes. 3, warning signs to watch for. I always say there's a number of red flags to look for when you have a situation of potential elder abuse. Any major change, so if there is someone who wasn't involved before and now all of a sudden is very involved with a senior or a vulnerable adult, they are often going to be blocking access by other people. So if all visits have to be scheduled through them, or if the senior doesn't have access to their phone or is just kind of withdrawn, all of those are possible warning signs. There could be other reasons that this is happening, but often that kind of thing can be a warning sign that the perpetrator is trying to isolate them and in order to be able to take advantage. Sometimes when a senior acts afraid of a caregiver or all of a sudden wants to change a caregiver, that might be a sign that something is going on. Now, we do have to remember that often dementia does include paranoia, so it isn't necessarily true that there is elder abuse, but it is something to at least be aware of as a potential. I often find that a thing to look for is if an individual who has always been paying their bills and all of a sudden now there's termination notices or there is, a major financial change, the electric is shut off. Any of those are, of course, really serious signs that something is happening. And as I mentioned before, new individuals. So you've got a new friend, a neighbor who wasn't very involved that all of a sudden is over all of the time. All of these things are something to look for, that there could be something awry. Financial exploitation can be really hard to diagnose because, you're not involved. You may not be involved in the individual's financial affairs that intimately. And as I said before, there's often an embarrassment, so they may not be willing to share that information. But if there is a major change in, or even a smaller change in older individuals' behavior, so if there's something like nervousness, more weepiness, more anxiety, those could all be signs that exploitation is happening or is at least could be in the distance. So I think that that's something to look for. Anytime you're really seeing a behavioral change, it might just be, a part of the person's cognitive decline, but it also might be a situation of elder abuse going on. So it's worth taking the time to sit down, have a conversation with your loved one, try to have them share some information with you and see what's going on with them. 4, legal responsibilities and reporting. Many professionals are mandated to report abuse, and so we often will find that the first person to uncover the financial exploitation would be a bank, financial advisors, or an accountant. And so it is really useful to have contact with those individuals, particularly a financial advisor and accountants, prior to any exploitation. So if you have a loved one who is getting older and maybe needs some assistance with their financial affairs, that would be a good time to reach out to the financial advisor, maybe be added as a trusted contact and share your information so that if they do have any concerns, that they can reach out and share that information with you, and that they do have authority to do that. When individuals don't report, that can have legal consequences for them. So we may find that a social worker or a doctor may have some idea that there's some kind of abuse going on, and they are legally required to make reports. I know that sometimes professionals are hesitant to report, and even family members are hesitant to get involved or report, but it really is important. It's really the only way to protect the vulnerable adults. So we want to make sure that if you are suspecting or concerned about something, that you reach out to the appropriate authorities. And we'll talk about what your options are for that a little bit later. 5, where to turn for help. So the agency that is charged with assisting vulnerable adults is the Adult Protective Services. And you can make a report, anyone can make a report to APS, as they're referred to, in a situation where there is concern about elder abuse or financial exploitation. They're anonymous reports, and then the Adult Protective Services will do an investigation. They'll come out and meet with the senior and determine if there needs to be a further investigation. So that is usually going to be your first step. Another option, if we're talking about a family member and that family member has cognitive decline, is that you might consider speaking with an attorney about whether a guardianship action or some other protective arrangement might be appropriate. So attorneys can assist in both stopping the exploitation as well as recovering the assets. So, and generally, although not exclusively, that's going to happen in a guardianship action. When we're talking about a situation of financial exploitation by an unknown person, so a scam or something where it's being perpetrated by people not involved in the family at all, that might be something where there would be a legal report made either to the police, and sometimes if it's something that is through the mail or email or through banks, then other agencies can get involved in that. So I would start with the report to the police, and then they can assist you in figuring out what other agencies might be appropriate to get involved in that kind of scenario. I think it's really important, if you are concerned about your loved one who is maybe financially inexperienced, maybe experiencing some grief, and so more vulnerable to this type of exploitation, that it's a good idea to have those conversations with them talk to them about financial scams, not sharing information over the phone or through the computer, and really, getting them as prepared as possible to protect them, and also having the right documents in place to be able to make sure that you can assist them and help keep them from being a victim. If you do have a loved one who you believe is a victim, then it's really important to get involved and be able to either just stop what's happening so it doesn't continue on and further deplete their assets, and potentially working with an attorney and law enforcement to be able to seek return of some of those funds. 6, when to involve an elder law attorney. Elder law attorneys do often get involved in these cases in a number of situations. Often we can get involved early on before there is exploitation, and that's obviously the best scenario. We can put into place some systems to be able to protect an individual, whether that's a power of attorney, a revocable trust with family members as trustees, or other mechanisms to try to protect the individual's assets. In the case where that is no longer an option, often a guardianship will be important to be able to protect the financial assets of the vulnerable adult. We can also use a guardianship, and in New Jersey we have something called a protective arrangement, where there can be actions that are taken by the financial institutions to be able to freeze the assets and be able to make sure that no further exploitation occurs. A guardianship is also commonly brought when we have conflict among family members and we see a situation where a family member is being denied access to their loved one or their parent. And that's often, as I mentioned, kind of a first step in trying to isolate that individual and to take control of their financial assets. So again, if there is a situation where someone is keeping you from accessing your family member, visiting with them, speaking with them, or just not sharing financial information that everybody used to share, that would be a situation that you might want to consult an attorney, think about whether guardianship action would be appropriate. You can also request an accounting of the individual who is holding the funds to make sure that the funds are being used in an appropriate manner for the best interests of the older adults. So these are all situations where elder law attorneys can get involved and guide you as to what steps you can and cannot take and what may be the best course of action to be able to protect your loved one. If you found this video helpful, be sure to check out my other Aging Answers episodes for more practical guidance. If you have questions or a situation you're unsure about, leave a comment or reach out directly. I'm always here to help. You can contact me at 908-252-4253 or ssiegel@norris-law.com. That info is also in the description. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a video on aging, elder law, and protecting the people you love.